Do you think the CCP is listening to our podcast through our phones?
Or on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple iPods, Tunes.
Apple Podcasts?
Apple Podcasts, iTunes. Yeah, I mean, why not? They're people. They like to be entertained. We are entertaining.
Yeah.
Maybe they think the Prepper channel is a good idea.
Maybe. Any communist officials watching this, let me know if you want a Prepper show.
Because that's what we do now. We cater our programming to the CCP officials secretly watching us.
Why not? Throw them a bone.
Well, they're about to be in for a lot of stress with the 20th Party Congress coming up.
Oh yeah, that's the big news. I am so excited, you guys. I've got the chips and the popcorn, all the fun snacks. For me, this is like the Super Bowl.
And you're gonna stare at a blank wall, right? Because that's about as much information.
I'm going
as
to
we're
imagine
gonna
real hard. But I will be wearing my General Hostility T-shirt, which you too can now own. Go to ChinaUncensored.tv/merchandise and pick up get several T-shirts for yourself.
It is the people's favorite communist soap opera.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't want to be dressed up like that? But yeah, like I know the security ahead of these things are insane. I remember when I started China Uncensored 10 years ago, there was another one happening, and like they were banning ping pong balls in Beijing because they were like, oh, somebody could write a subversive message on the ping pong ball and throw it out of a taxi, and then it'd bounce around and people might see it.
That sounds crazy, but also, we recently watched this documentary called Eternal Spring about these Falun Gong practitioners who hijacked a cable TV connection in the city in China called Changchun, and how but it mentioned that before they did that, they were doing things like releasing balloons into the air that had like messages about how like Falun Gong was good and things like that. So I could see that they might be, if they're worried about balloons and they're worried about flyers or I could see them maybe being worried about ping pong balls. Who knows?
Gotta stay one step ahead. I think they were even removing like the window handles in taxi cabs, so you could not open the windows.
Like the kind where you manually roll it down.
Yeah.
Like so, it's like the year 2000, and you roll them down by hand. Actually, it's like 1980.
No, I mean I'm sure they had those in the 90s.
The taxi cabs that I was in China in like 2002 were like much older cars with the manual windows.
Which makes sense because once the invasion of Taiwan happens and we no longer have semiconductors, you'll want to manually be able to control your windows.
Yeah, you have to go back to manufacturing cars like, in the good old days when
it would be easier to do that than to create domestic semiconductor manufacturing.
Actually, I don't know. Well, in some ways, yes, I guess. Well, it would be less expensive to do that.
Right. I mean,
certainly.
I think that's what happened in the book Dune, because they try to eliminate technology.
Though slightly differently, because there was like a giant AI uprising and there was a big war against thinking machines.
I've also not read Dune.
It's fine. We'll watch part 2 when it comes out.
But I was going to say about the zero COVID thing now adds an additional layer of complexity. So now they don't have to just worry about ping pong balls. They have to worry about keeping the COVID numbers down, especially in Beijing. So they're doing a bunch of like crazy things. Like we were talking at the beginning of the show about these tourists in Yunnan province that got stranded at the airport. Apparently, a few days later, most of them would be allowed to book flights out. That was what like the reporting said, except the ones going to Beijing. No flights were going to be allowed to go to Beijing.
Wow. The capital city.
Yeah, because they need to keep COVID out of Beijing. Like that is the number one thing that they can't have. Like,
why can't they just lie like they usually do?
I think they would, except if they got caught, then the consequences of that would be really bad this time. So there was this quote about officials in Inner Mongolia being told, where there was like a spike in cases, being told that, you need to stop infections by killing chickens with a knife for slaughtering cows. Which
say that again?
Killing chickens with a knife for slaughtering cows. So the idea is overkill.
Like they're encouraging overkill.
They're encouraging overkill. The actual Chinese idiom is about like not killing chickens. Like you don't need to kill chickens with a knife for cows. But now like they're flipping that around and telling the officials that you should be killing chickens with a knife for cows.
Okay.
So the whole idea is to do as much as possible,
do exactly what like thousands of years of Chinese culture have told you not to do.
Just, go overboard.
Yeah, well, I guess it's like the, kill a fly with a cannonball kind of thing.
Is that a...
I think this is saying like
bazooka or something?
What?
I don't know. Is it cannonball? Kill a fly with a cannonball?
Or a cannon. Yeah.
All right.
I swear it's a thing.
But anyway, it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
just overkill. And in fact, they could have just said, we're going to encourage everyone to overkill.
I mean, that's essentially what they did.
Yes.
But like Hainan province, which is like this tropical, the
Hawaii of China.
They locked down and started doing mass testing because they supposedly recorded 2 cases.
That's crazy. Well, so why are they pushing this overkill approach? It's just because of the party congress?
Because of the party congress.
They just keep everything down.
This is the most politically sensitive time, especially since Xi Jinping is going for his, 3rd term as general secretary. The norm breaking, aka, although the norm hasn't lasted that long. So
yeah.
But anyway, so there was a crazy thing I saw on Twitter where this guy was in Shanghai was saying that he, I guess, and his wife were out for lunch, and their building went into 48-hour lockdown while they were at lunch.
Wow.
So they decided to get a hotel for the night. And then the hotel they stayed at went into a 7-day lockdown.
Wow.
When they were there because of a positive COVID case. So, yeah, that's an idea of, this inescapable trap of zero COVID, right?
Yeah, and just also it like ties into the whole thing about how the central government issues a policy directive, and it's up to all the local authorities to implement it in such extreme, crazy ways because they can easily be punished or purged for if they have to make a show, they had to make an example out of somebody.
Yeah,
and we know they'll use the cow knives on them.
And then the fact that this is kind of where it's going, right? Like this is the ridiculous, like people less and less are willing to support zero COVID. So then you have more and more videos of people protesting, fighting the people in the dabai suits in the streets. There was a video supposedly of an apartment building that went into lockdown, and then people were just like running out of the lobby.
Wow.
I mean, you see all these videos of people running out of IKEA or Costco whenever the stores go into lockdown. But think about your home, like your apartment building goes into lockdown. Everybody's first idea is to get out, like escape, run away as quickly as possible so you don't get caught.
And this is what's, I mean, as we said, like if anything, zero COVID is getting more extreme, at least up until the party congress. And just people aren't having it. Like where does the party think this is going to go to? Like, is it a case that they're just, cranking it up just for the party congress, and then when it's done, they'll start to dial it back down? Typically, authoritarian governments, when they have power, they don't let go of the reins too easily.
I don't think that they'll necessarily, like, the policy might not immediately change, but local officials might feel less pressure to use the cow knife. So they might just go back to
the chicken knife?
Well, the kind of thing where they look like they're doing it, but not like for example, when you go into a store or something, you're supposed to scan your health app so that it knows that you have a green code. Some people just like take a photo of like their health app when it had a green code on it and just like literally show the code, the QR code. See, it's green. And then a lot of stores let people get away with that because they also don't want to go through scanning everybody for their health code. But lately the government started putting up security cameras at the front of these shops. So then they could watch to see whether these stores were really scanning people's codes.
Right. So what's interesting about this is that, like, at some point, zero COVID is already unsustainable, but at some point it'll have to be backed off, because that's just there's the disease isn't going to go away under zero COVID. But what's going to remain is all of the surveillance stuff that they're putting in place for COVID. So like the health app is probably going to be around forever. You're probably always going to have some equivalent of a health app. The stores that have, cameras in front that the government can access, like those aren't going to go away. So it's like COVID is a great excuse to increase the Orwellian mass surveillance. And then that's the part I think, you said, Chris, that they're never going to back down. It's like they're not, right? But they can back down on COVID without backing down on all of the Orwellian Big Brother stuff.
Well, the other side of it, too, is the economy is tanking because of zero COVID, except for the COVID economy, which is basically the only big business going on right now. The never-ending, test kits.
Yeah.
And, I don't imagine that, like, that's an industry that's just going to disappear, because that's what the economy is right now.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think they're going to keep doing testing and stuff and I think people have mostly accepted a certain level of that. But yeah, I think when it comes to things like what happened at that airport in Yunnan, where they just suddenly got fed up, or these videos of people coming out on the streets and things like that, if they don't stop doing that like level, then we could see much more protests like that.
Yeah. And the good thing is, like, as with what happened at the airport, people have cell phones. Like, as for all the control the Chinese Communist Party has over the internet, which is a lot, when everyone has a cell phone, like, things get out and people get upset. Like, people saw what happened in Shanghai lockdown. They saw what happened in the Xi'an lockdowns. And that's feeding the sentiment about, what happened in the airport. It's the genie's not going back in the Amazon package.
There we go. I mean, I was thinking, Matt, to your point about the surveillance state and things like that. In Hong Kong, they've built a 9,000-person quarantine facility in Penny Bay that is right next to the Hong Kong Disneyland. Like, when you...
I like the irony of that.
Someone had posted a photo on Twitter of at night looking over like it's landing in Hong Kong or something. So you see, like, you can kind of see Hong Kong Disneyland, and right next to it is this giant lit up, quarantine facility. I just don't think that quarantine facility is going to ever get taken down. I think they're going to use it for other things. Maybe
it'll be converted into affordable housing.
I was going to say it could become a detention center.
For the prisoners, they don't have to pay rent, so it's quite affordable.
There you go.
Once again, Matt and I are the optimists. You're just such a negative Nancy.
I think Matt was the pessimist before when he said it was like 80 or we were going to be 80 before we went back to Hong Kong.
Oh, good point. I guess I'm the only optimist.
You and your spear wielding prepper channel.
Stay tuned for Preppers Unprepped.
Seems a little redundant.
No, it's the opposite. Well,